Thanks, Steffi. I've been on many Africa panels, but I've rarely been that comfortable at one, because today I'm, as the proverbially elderly white male, I'm interviewing three amazing tech role models from the African continent on a topic where we can only look up to Africa, and that is leapfrogging. Well, the term leapfrogging, it was coined by an Austrian economist, and it describes how when you start from below, you can sometimes jump higher and end up on a higher level than countries that are in the middle. I personally never liked leapfrogging as a word so much. The frog is not the most sexy thing in the world. Do you like it?
I personally quite like it. The reason being that it's very vivid. When you talk about leapfrogging, you're thinking about something that gives you a real image of what it can be. And when we're thinking about technology helping Africa leapfrog, whether it's an economic perspective or social inclusion, it really gives that really vivid image. But we can always coin our own.
Well, how about lion leaping or something more African?
I like lions, and we can even call it Simba leaping.
Oh,
Simba,
great.
yeah.
Even higher. Well, let's look at some leapfrogging stories from the continent. Juliana, I've known you for long, but recently you're working for Safaricom. Safaricom is an amazing company on the African continent that employed a payment system we can only dream of here in Germany. I actually constantly am embarrassed because I can't pay, because I'm so used to pay on my phone in Kenya that in Germany I lose my credit card. There's multiple systems that are usually not working, and I end up being embarrassed. But Safaricom did that much better. Maybe you can share that amazing story with us.
Sure. Thank you so much, Ludwig. It's always great to be here in DLD to spend time with old friends and new friends. So the story of M-pesa is the story of transforming people's lives. Let me take you back to 2007 when mobile connectivity rates were very, very low, and broadband rates were very low. We're talking less than 8%. At that time, it was very difficult for Kenyans to be able to send money from urban areas back to upcountry areas. Typically, they would depend on untrustworthy intermediaries. You would give them an envelope with the money to send, then you wouldn't know whether or not the money has arrived. So in 2007, Safaricom came up with m-pesa, which enables e-money. You deposit money into a mobile money wallet, and with that mobile money wallet, you're able to send money to the recipient. They get an SMS, a simple SMS that tells them they have X amount sent to them. So that was 2007. 70,000 users at that time, and now we're talking about more than 30 million users who are able to do peer-to-peer money transfers. They're now also able to access credit in a dignified manner, where you do not have to go sit with somebody to explain to them the problem that you need the money for. And now we're also including more financial health services. It's really a story of transforming the financial inclusion rates in Kenya to some of the highest in the world, at more than 83% in terms of financial inclusion. I'm not sure about the financial inclusion rates in Europe. However, I can categorically say that that story would be very different for Kenya were it not for M-pesa financial services.
Yeah, it's really amazing. I mean, I've seen one nomad sell a goat to another nomad, both take out their old Nokia phone, type in a number, and they have the money, and everybody has it. It always works as long as you have a battery, and these old phones, they have new batteries now. They last for 3 weeks without charging. Amazing.
Yeah.
Charles, this is a great example of leapfrogging. You work for Google. You do the Africa policy. Do your colleagues in Palo Alto appreciate this potential that's on the African continent, how fast you can roll things out?
Absolutely. I think one thing that I can categorically say is that Google is really focused on investing in Africa and has been investing in Africa for quite some time. We were one of the first investors in CCOM, the subsea cable that landed, one of the first subsea cables that landed in East Africa. But we more recently announced our new undersea cable that goes from Portugal down to Cape Town, and are launching our new cloud region in South Africa. So these are just examples of some of the major infrastructure investments, but access is critical as well. So we've partnered together with Safaricom for a pay-as-you-go model of a device, which was the first time in the world that we've created that type of technology, and are now currently rolling that beyond Kenya, and should go into other markets in Latin America as well as Asia.
That's amazing. Inya, I spoke with your colleague from Nigeria, with Kishafu, on Thursday, I think, and he told us that out of the 8 African unicorns, 5 are in Nigeria.
Absolutely.
Do you have a favorite one?
Can I pick all of them?
You can pick any. It's yours.
I would say all of them. I mean, they're all amazing. Flutterwave, Vandela, Opay. One that inspires recently by a Nigerian is called Esusu. Esusu is an Igbo word for collection, and we have different languages that we call it in Ajo, or in Hausa it's also called Adashe. And the concept of getting money every month and saving and finding ways to bridge the financial gap, I think it's amazing. But what they've done, this Nigeria has done with Esusu, is to give access of housing to people. So he takes the credit rates and reports them to the the credit bureau that gives more access to people for housing. And I think that's amazing. That's a good example of taking something local, getting that as inspiration, and using it to help people across the world.
And grown on a very African idea that would probably never have been possible here. But now, while we're short on time, let's try to analyze the reason why leapfrogging works so well in Africa. Juliana, what can you think of? Can you give us an example why it works so well?
I think, so DLD is also about design. So the thing that makes leapfrogging work, particularly in Kenya and Africa, is we're dealing with a lot of constraints. Constraints when it comes to devices that are available, constraints in terms of connectivity, constraints in terms of can people afford these technologies. However, because of these constraints, then the products and services have to be designed in a way that adoption is easy. So you have to be very simple, very clean. So it's really at the apex of design, because when you're designing, you have to really make sure that you're designing something that is functional, useful, and can be adopted easily. The other driver for leapfrogging is innovation in business models. Charles Murito mentioned about pay-as-you-go as a business model that enables that uptake, and also just making sure that the products and services we create can be distributed and can reach people. And last but not least is making sure that whatever we do is inclusive and has impact at scale. So adoption at scale, inclusivity at scale, and impact at scale that's when you see that big leap.
Yeah, that's an amazing analysis. Hard conditions lead to good solutions. I like that.
Yeah.
Charles, you're in charge of policy. How does the legal framework play into this?
So because of my current role, I'm definitely biased in saying that policy and having the right regulatory frameworks is absolutely critical for leapfrogging. And so when I look at what's happening across the continent, I see DG Kashifu here from NITA in Nigeria. We've been working very closely together on different policy frameworks, whether they are affecting the startup ecosystem or other elements of technology. Policy cannot, or innovation cannot exist in isolation without the right policy frameworks and regulatory frameworks, because you do need to have certain guardrails that protect consumers, but at the same time having the right policies that create that innovation sort of boundaries, and you can innovate. M-pesa is an example of that, whereby the policy actually came after the innovation happened. So the ability to also create those sandboxes that people can go out, innovate, but work closely with government to ensure that the regulation that comes is forward-looking, and the speed and rate that innovation happens, you cannot have very stringent policies that are going to stifle innovation. So for me, that's something that's very close to my heart in the work that I do on a daily basis.
Yes, I think that's some advice many companies can really take if you want to roll out something. Might be easier in Africa. It's just there you have new regulations not growing over decades in a weird construct between maybe a European Union and national states. Straightforward, leads to the point, can be done. Inya, what do you think? What are the reasons? You come from an entrepreneurial background. What can you say about what drives
So
it?
I would say innovation and growth opportunity. How many people enjoy African music here? Afropop, see? That many people. It's gone global, and we all know about it. It wasn't always global, right? And I'll give you one example. There's this wonderful man called Alex Okosi, and he did a lot for the music industry and its growth all around the world. He was working with Viacom at the time, and he was instrumental to bringing MTV into Africa. But when he brought MTV into Africa in 2017, we weren't shooting music videos, and the few music videos that were shot were badly produced. What did they do? They partnered with Shell, and they did a program called MTV Making the Video. And what did they do? They got music producers, music video producers from the US, brought them into, I think, 8 African countries at the time, and trained young stars in making music videos, exceptional music videos, and that alone transformed the music industry, and that's why you know of those African music today. How many of you know Burna Boy, Wizkid, or you see? Many people. So I think, yeah, the opportunities are there, but we need some of this intervention programs to get them there, and Africa is very open to it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love this kind of work where you really bring an idea to young people and they adopt it. And that's also one of the things of Africa. You just have incredible amounts of young people there. I mean, every second child is born on the African continent. I mean, you mentioned a good number before about how many will be the future workforce.
Absolutely. So when you think about Africa, we need to really get our mind around this notion that what happens in Africa, what's good in Africa, is actually good for the world. And the notion is that by 2050, more than 1/3 of the world's workforce are going to be in Africa. And already as we speak, when you look at the technology space, 38% of all software engineers in Africa are working for companies outside Africa. And I think Learning Lions is an example of some of the work that where people in Africa are actually doing virtual jobs. And what COVID has done is actually accelerated that piece of remote and virtual work, which is fantastic.
Yes, it's truly something we can see all the time. And as long as the AI doesn't take away all the job for the young people, which we don't hope, also some people this conference have hinted on it, but I still believe in the human touch. And there's so much talent. These are the real diamonds of the continent. And working with young people in rural areas in the last 10 years, I've noticed there's incredible potential there. And then it's just every young person there has a smartphone. It makes Africa the smartphone continent in many ways. We use this for our education as well. We used to train people on laptops, but nowadays our beginners, we only train them on smartphones because they can do graphic design there, they can have their entire office there, they can have, they can do web development there. I love the Google Office Suite, for example. You can do pretty much anything you used to be able to do in Microsoft Office nowadays on a smartphone, on the computer. Do you have any data that supports the people actually using this?
I don't have the actual data on how many people are using the work Google products on a device. However, one of the things that I can say is that over the next 3 years, we're going to see over 300 million new mobile users on the continent. So what that means is creating a really fantastic opportunity for mobile-first tools to be leveraged across the continent. And you know, a lot of the world, we talk about the world moving into a mobile-first environment. In Africa, it's really mobile only, because that's really the first place whereby you actually got online for a lot of the people. So that creates a really fantastic opportunity for innovation on mobile.
Yeah.
You're also in education, Inya.
Yes.
Is that something true? Can we really push the youth into working mostly on mobile?
Absolutely, and they're very open to it. One thing I would like to do is to work with people to see how we can digitalize mentoring, because there's so many inspiring women who have broken bounds all over the world, and it'll be good for these youngsters to have access to them, and even in the local communities. And I hear mobiles can do amazing things these days. I think to what you're speaking. Yeah. So yes, I absolutely believe so.
It's quite amazing what you can do with a phone, just as you say. And it's not just the creative arts which are amazing there, but you can also structure your life much better. So just the financial sector is so interesting. Juliana, you've been very active there.
Yes. So just to add on to what you've talked about, Murito mentioned about 300 million mobile users. By 2050, that number is going to be about 623 million. And then just in financial services alone, the opportunity is around 40 billion by 2025. So we're looking at massive numbers, and something that we firmly believe in, not only the current success story of African innovation, but also we see a very bright future ahead. Now, in terms of the things that people can do on mobile, they're able to run their businesses. It's not often uncommon to find a young African with 2 or 3 businesses. And with, for example, some of the mobile apps that we have for both consumers and for business, like a young businessman can keep an eye on his business while it's being run by someone else, and they can get a report of how many sales they've had that day, and they can track the performance of that business from wherever they are. I'll just tell a very quick story about the empowering nature of the mobile applications and platforms that we have. The story of M-pesa, like I mentioned, is about transforming people's lives. A woman could be able to access credit in the morning or access money on M-pesa and be able to go buy goods, sell them during the day, and be able to pay back the loan that very night. And in partnership with the government, we launched a financial inclusion fund just within 41 days. And we're hearing stories about Uber drivers who are able to access money, do the work that they need, and pay it back, and it gives them economic empowerment. So mobile devices are tools of economic empowerment.
And they give that leapfrogging advantage, because really, normally you would have to study how bookkeeping a bit to do all that. Nowadays, the mobile helps you. It suddenly makes it possible.
Correct.
We're quite at the end of the conference, and we heard some amazing speakers. So I want to put forth a little bit of a wild theory on where leapfrogging in Africa might go. And we had Richard Soccer talk here about U.com and U.chats, and everybody has, I don't know how often I heard ChatGPT this time at the conference. Now, as we heard, in Africa, we have incredible numbers of people that have access to smartphones, but even more and higher numbers of people that had access to only mobile phones, not smartphones.
Feature
These
phones.
old Nokia phones.
Feature
Exactly.
phones.
And is it not possible you work for Safaricom, could not Safaricom make a cooperation with one of those AI language-based companies, just that even those people could basically use their phone, call a number, and surf the internet?
I think your question points to one key thing that we would like to challenge. And when we're talking about the language models and we're talking about the AI, the generative AI and all of that, they are trained, they're largely English-based, right? So we were talking earlier, Kenya has about 38 different languages and Nigeria has 500.
Over 500.
Over 500. So how many of those AI and generative AI and language models use African languages to train their machines? That way, when somebody can make that call, they can converse and get the answers that they need in African languages.
We have the experts here. Let's do a show of hands. Who thinks that this model can easily adapt to African languages as well? Anybody who thinks it's possible? Not that easily? I think everything will happen what's on the planet.
Yeah, and that's the challenge, because this is the future. The future is Africa. So why aren't the language models taking into account a really large swath of the future? So we need to do more work there.
But even with the English, it might already be quite a nice thing. And I asked myself, Charles, why don't you do it? I know Google played it very cool when all this intelligence things came out and said, yes, they might be nice, it's a nice toy, but we have something better. We just choose not to release it. Africa is perfect for leapfrogging, trying out new ideas, less regulations, as you said. Why don't you release Lambda on the African continent with a hotline, even in English?
Obviously, I cannot make any forward-looking statements here or anywhere else. However, I can say that just in the last 2 months, we just added 24 new African languages into Google Translate, and this is something that we've been working on and will continue to work on. So I think that voice is something that's absolutely critical. Voice and mobile go hand in hand, and so that's something that we should consistently keep working together as an industry to ensure that all African languages not only are online and on the internet, but are also living and consistently being preserved.
Very good. I know you can't say, but I still say think about it. Well, while our countdown is ticking down here, I really want to give Inya the last word. Where do you think African leapfrogging can take us?
Well, I'm just looking to as many people as have promised, here to do some, especially starting from you. You talked about 25 languages. I think I'm in the position as someone representing the country with over 500 languages to say. I'm looking to, all of the innovative people here to give solutions to that. We need to include everyone when we're pushing forward in life. We need to include Africa. Including Africa is including everyone in that sense, because at the end of the day, whatever we do in Africa trickles back to the world. And we need to make whatever we're creating or whatever solutions or products available. We need to make it inclusive. We also need to have it at the back of our minds that we all need economic empowerment. And by empowerment, it's not just giving aid. It's about, building businesses that are sustainable and are accessible to everyone. And for someone who champions the cause of women in Africa as well, we need to have it at the back of our minds that we need to include everybody, including women, men, and everyone all around the world. African, whoever you are, we need to be inclusive.
Let's end at this beautiful word.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steffi, for this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.